Conculia agus Conculia is Tánaiste Eamon ar dus Banachtaí blianúr a hord Steve se Goldar agus Tasula Guru Susmai Ogubsha Marasol Dove ni pobl an tragar am Alfersta Susser B the Lin na Shachtana atá Kaitja. Tánaiste, I'm sure you're concerned at events in recent weeks in the north, and my lease should not be exaggerated. I think they do show the need for constant and consistent support for the political and peace processes, and despite all your other obligations, the need for the government to be focused on these matters. Now, you will know that the Good Friday Agreement states that symbols and emblems should be used in a manner which promotes mutual respect rather than division. And this recognises the reality that there are two flags that the vast majority of people in the 6 counties give their allegiance to, the Union flag and the Irish tricolour. And for this reason, some councils fly no flags, while at Stormont and in other councils the Union flag flies on designated days only. Now, Belfast City Council took legal advice on this issue. It received advice from the Equality Commission. There was an equality impact assessment, and the decision in December was in keeping with these, and ironically enough, with the protocols in Britain itself. It was a democratic decision and was entirely proper and appropriate, and democratic and peaceful opposition to it would also be proper. But I'm sure you will agree that the violent sectarian reaction is entirely wrong. I'm sure you will agree that the illegal protests need to be brought to an end before someone is killed, and that the attacks on the Short Strand community need to stop. I visited there on Sunday. The Deputy First Minister is there today. Short Strand is a community under siege. There have been 16 illegal loyalist marches in recent weeks and countless sectarian interface protests. And since the recent violence began, the Deputy First Minister, as you will know, your department has been in contact with the Executive, has been endeavouring to bring about all-party opposition to the violence and the protests, and he continues to do so. Now, Tánaiste, you will remember when the 2 British soldiers were killed in 2009, and indeed when the 2 PSNI officers were killed after that, that Martin McGuinness stood shoulder to shoulder with Peter Robertson and in a very, very robust way set out opposition to those dreadful events and led a robust all-party and cross-community response. There was no equivocation, and the same need is there today. The same all-party approach is required today. So, Tánaiste, I'm asking you to join in calling for an all-party, cross-community response to bring these illegal, violent protests to an end.
Thank you.
And I would also ask you to visit East Belfast tomorrow. You will be there, I presume, to visit with the people there, and particularly with the people in the Short Strand and the loyalist areas adjacent to it.
Thank you.
Well, ar dús bhfuilm Banachtaí na Hathlína bhron orta freisin agus an óir ar gachbald gan cha, and while I'm on that, I'm aware that you also had surgery recently, Deputy Adams, and I want to wish you a good recovery. In recent weeks, and let me say first of all that I am very concerned, and the government is very concerned about what we have been seeing in Belfast and elsewhere in recent weeks. The widespread street violence that we have seen, attacks on the police service of Northern Ireland, including the attempted murder of police officers and widespread attempts to intimidate public representatives and their families. And I have condemned these events unreservedly. I have, as you are aware, remained in contact with the Secretary of State for Northern Ireland, Theresa Villiers, and with all of the party leaders in Northern Ireland throughout that period of time. Over the past week, I have spoken with Peter Robinson, Martin McGuinness, David Ford, Mike Nesbitt and Alistair MacDonagh. I will be travelling to Belfast tomorrow morning to meet with the Secretary of State and the First Minister and Deputy First Minister. And officials from my department continue to work closely with the British Government and with political representatives in Northern Ireland to identify ways to address not just the current crisis but its underlying problems. And indeed, my officials have been in close contact with all of what has been happening on the ground. My officials visited St Matthew's Church and the Short Strand community yesterday, and they have reported to me extensively on the situation locally. I am concerned by reports that the attacks on houses in the Short Strand were premeditated, and I condemn them. And I will be discussing that matter with the Secretary of State and the First Minister and Deputy First Minister when I meet them tomorrow, and I hope to visit the Short Strand area and other community interfaces in the near future. The economic cost of recent events is becoming apparent. Apart from the cost of the policing operation, which is estimated at €7 million, foreign direct investment, the retail trade and tourism are all at risk. The Confederation of British Industry Director in Northern Ireland has warned of the economic damage being inflicted on local businesses, tourism and investment. It is my hope that out of this setback we will see a redoubling of efforts to achieve a genuinely reconciled society in Northern Ireland. It is a reminder to all of us that the peace process is exactly that, a process which still has some way to go. Political cooperation and security cooperation on this island have never been better, and we can rely on those relationships of trust and on the resilience of the Good Friday Agreement to create space for progress beyond the current difficulties. The Irish Government has no closer political relationship than with the Northern Ireland Executive. Over the past year alone, the Taoiseach, myself and Irish Government ministers have met with members of the Northern Ireland Executive on over 50 occasions. The persistence of sectarianism in Northern Ireland and the absence of agreement on the shared future agenda contribute to the likelihood of incidents such as those we have witnessed in recent weeks. Building relationships between divided communities takes time and a sustained effort and investment. And I want to assure you and to assure the House that this Government is committed to doing just that.
Thank you. Tánaiste Deputy Adams.
Well, I thank you, first of all, for your best wishes, Tánaiste, but I thank you also for your response. And I'm pleased that you will travel to meet with the First and Deputy First Minister tomorrow, and I have been in touch, as have other Belfast representatives, with your department. I do think you should try and carve out time tomorrow to meet with people in those communities. I appreciate the work that's ongoing, and I also understand very much the many responsibilities which the government have, not least on the economic front. But as you say, I paraphrase it, the peace process cannot be taken for granted. And what we need is an ongoing, steady, almost invisible engagement by government ministers right across all sectors in the north. We also need to explore, some of the people who are behind these protests. I mean, the British National Party are engaged in whipping up these tensions and fears. The Ulster Volunteer Force is also heavily involved, and those attacks were premeditated over recent evenings. And an issue which this Dáil has to address, and which I think everyone who lives in this island has to address, is the issue of sectarianism. That has to be tackled, and the ongoing need to recognise, I'm from Belfast, these protesters do not represent the vast majority of people in Belfast. The vast majority of people in Belfast are living in a modern city, which has many, many proud traditions, and which they want to see shared on the basis of equality. That's the view. That's what we have come through in the last 40 years, and that's what the vast majority of people have settled for. So I think the government needs to continuously underpin, in this state as well as in the northern state, principles of equality, parity of esteem and mutual respect. And I'll finish on just by, again, and I'm not preaching, I'm not lecturing, I'm just making a point, this needs constant attention. It cannot be taken for granted, and it's the grace of God that someone hasn't been killed. So we need to get all representatives of civic society, of the community, of the political classes, of the business classes, standing shoulder to shoulder against what is a very, very small minority.
Thank you. Tánaiste.
Well, first of all, I think it does have to be said that this is a very small minority. You know, people have a right to protest, and somebody who's unhappy with a democratic decision made by the elected members of Belfast City Council, they're entitled to protest against it. We all defend that right. But what they are not entitled to do is to go out, to fire petrol bombs at the police, to go around and to intimidate and threaten elected public representatives, including some of those public representatives who were involved in making that decision. And they do not have the right to disrupt, in the way that they have done so, the normal business life of Belfast and other areas. And it has to stop. And yes, you are also right that what is required here is the political leadership in Northern Ireland standing shoulder to shoulder. And I have spoken with, and you will be aware of this, I'm sure, from the Deputy First Minister, I'm sure, that I have been very much in touch with him and with other political leaders over this period of time since this problem arose sometime before Christmas. We had hoped that it would die down over the Christmas and New Year period, but of course it has continued now. I am anxious. Tomorrow's meeting, the original plan was that we would have that meeting on Friday, but I think there were problems at the Belfast Inn and people being available. And I was anxious that the meeting did not get pushed forward to a future date. So tomorrow is a difficult. There's a cabinet meeting tomorrow afternoon, for example, on the jobs crisis here, which is very important. So I decided, rather than be here for leaders' questions tomorrow, that it would be appropriate to have the meeting tomorrow rather than let it run into next week, because this is something that I do not want to see long-fingered. It's something that we want to deal with now. I want to work with the Secretary of State for Northern Ireland, and I've been in regular touch with her about what has been taking place, to provide the support from the two governments to the political leadership, the Northern Ireland Executive, in getting on top of this situation, and to put an end to the street violence that is taking place, that has been taking place over the last period of time, but also to address the issues which are at the root of this, issues relating to shared society, issues related to concerns that people have, and to dealing with the problem of sectarianism in Northern Ireland, which you have rightly identified.
Thank you.